So I got invited to an Easter gathering and I was asked to bring a dessert. I really couldn't find anything I wanted, so I thought, you know what, why not make my own custom little cheesecakes? So I used Chavant NSP Hard to sculpt these cute little bunnies. Then I used our Equinox 38 Platinum Cure Silicone Mold Putty to make food-safe molds. And then I made these cute little cheesecake bites. I'm using Chavant NSP Hard to create my bunny sculpts. I chose the hard version of the clay because when I'm done sculpting them, I'm going to be pressing down with my mold putty and I don't want them to deform. The hard clay is really nice to use because it really holds the detail well. It's also sulfur-free, so it's not going to cause any cure inhibition with my silicone mold putty. If I were going to try to put this big old chunk of clay into the melting pot, it would take forever to soften, so I'm cutting it into smaller pieces to speed it up. It'll soften more evenly too. This hard clay is really great at holding all the detail, but it's a little bit tough on my hands. That's why I'm using a chocolate melting pot to soften it so it's easier to handle. You can find these melting pots online at places like Amazon or Walmart. I really love using the hard version of the clay because it holds all the detail, but it is hard to shape with my bare hands. That's why softening it first to get the general shape, letting it cool down, and then using my sculpting tools on it to get the exact shape I'm looking for is the way to go. Be careful when you're heating up the clay so you don't burn yourself. Also, don't go too far with the heat or else it won't just be softened, it's going to be all liquid, which is fine if that's what you're going for, but for me, I just want it soft and pliable. I'm going to use a small piece of foam core board as my base to lay the clay onto. When the clay's soft enough to work with, it's probably going to be around 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm just going to basically scoop it out with my fingers, kind of squish it around, and then lay it onto the board. The clay is warm to the touch, but not hot or uncomfortable, and it's really easy to adhere to itself and to the board. Once I have my basic roughed out shapes laid out, I'm going to let the clay cool down to its initial firmness. If I just tried to jump in and use my sculpting tools on it now while it was still kind of soft, it really wouldn't hold the detail as well. Now that the clay is all cooled down and firm again, I can go ahead and use my sculpting tools on it. I like to use the rake to kind of like get my general shape, and then I'll use other tools to smooth it out and get the design that I want. I find it a little bit hard to use my hands on the clay because it's the hard version, but using these metal tools makes it really easy. You can find sculpting tools online or at your local hobby store. Some people even like to make their own. Okay, here they are, my final pieces. I love how they turned out, and now I'm ready to make the molds. I'm going to use a little hot glue on my models to secure them to my working surface. That way they don't move when I apply the rubber over them. Since I have two bunny sculpts, I'm going to make two separate molds of them. This is going to make demolding my mini cheesecakes much easier. I'm using Equinox 38 Food Safe Platinum Silicone Mold Putty. This is a really unique product because you don't need any mixing containers or sticks, you just need your hands. And it also has a super easy mix ratio of 1:1 by volume. The mix ratio is 1:1 by volume. After I put on my gloves, I'll dispense part A. Once I have enough material, I'm going to switch out my gloves to avoid cross-contamination with the part B. I'll put fresh new gloves on. Now I'll dispense part B. You can see here that I have equal parts. When I'm mixing these parts together, I find that the best method is by folding it over and over onto itself until there's no color streaks and there's one uniform color. While you're mixing this material, really be conscientious of your timing because you only have a 4-minute pot life. Also, you don't have to use gloves when you're using this material. I do prefer to because it does sometimes feel a little bit greasy or oily and I like my hands to be clean. If you are going to use gloves, choose vinyl gloves. Don't use latex gloves because that can cause cure inhibition with the silicone. Once my putty is thoroughly mixed, I'm going to press and flatten it into the table to create a uniform thickness. I want to make sure that I don't have any creases or folds in it because that's going to transfer into my mold cavity. I'm going to apply my mixed rubber over the clay sculpt from the top down. I'm going to press it into the model gently to ensure I capture all the detail. After I've made my first mold, I'm going to use the exact same process to make the second one. I'll dispense the putty 1:1 by volume, mix it thoroughly until I achieve a uniform color, and then I'll slowly apply the mold putty over the model in the same manner, top down. After I'm done applying the mold rubber to both of these sculpts, I just have to wait 30 minutes at room temperature to let them cure. After that time's up, I get to see how they turned out. I have to admit, I was kind of surprised at just how easily the molds popped right off of the clay and they didn't even damage them. They turned out so good, and I just cannot wait to use them. Equinox 38 captured all the detail from my models, and now I'm ready to make some sweet treats. In preparation for making my mini cheesecakes, I need to wash the molds with dish soap, rinse them thoroughly, and then dry them. In the description below, there's a link to our technical bulletin for food safe processing guidelines. After I thoroughly wash the molds with dish soap, I'm going to dry them so we can make these cheesecakes. I'm using an easy no-bake recipe that I found online to make the cheesecake. I used a hand mixer to blend the cream cheese, vanilla extract, and condensed milk. Then I used my food processor to break up some graham crackers and melted butter to make my crust. I spread my cheesecake mixer evenly into my rubber molds. I left about 1/8 of an inch at the top so that I could put the graham cracker crust inside of there. I repeated the same process for both molds. Since this is a no-bake recipe, I set it in the freezer for about 2 hours to set. Once the cheesecake was hard, I removed it from the freezer and firmly pressed in my crumb. After my crumb was applied, I set that in the freezer for about 30 minutes. After about 30 minutes, I was able to remove these from the freezer and demold. These came out so easily from the mold, and they reflected all the detail I was hoping for. Okay, here they are, my finished bunny rabbits. The Equinox molds transferred all the detail to my cheesecakes. I just love how these turned out. I'm thrilled. These are gonna look so cute at my party. All right, now it's time for the taste test. Let's see how these came out. These came out so good. I actually never used a no-bake recipe before, and this is so easy. I think this is the way I'm gonna do it from now on. I was able to reuse my mold over and over in order to make more mini cheesecakes. And the cool thing is, with having this mold, is I can reuse it over and over again for other food safe applications. Like maybe I wanna make brownies, chocolates, gummies, whatnot. I really found the Chavant NSP clay easy to work with to make my little sculpts. Even the Equinox was super easy to make these molds with, and I really enjoyed the cheesecake recipe that I used. The no bake made it so easy. I think everyone's gonna be impressed at the party.